2025. Both parties are suddenly best friends again, at least when it comes to one thing: reindustrializing America. Biden's throwing green subsidies like confetti, Trump's slapping tariffs on anything that moves, and both swear they're bringing jobs back home. But here's the savage truth: they're not. Factories aren't roaring back. Manufacturing jobs are shrinking. And most of that so called investment boom? It's just data centers and AI servers, not steel mills and assembly lines. America's supposed industrial comeback is nothing but a political fantasy, one that's costing taxpayers billions while China quietly builds the real future. Walk with me. Let's pull back the curtain on the great American reindustrialization myth. For once, Washington actually agrees on something, at least on paper. Both Republicans and Democrats are obsessed with the idea of reindustrializing America. Biden calls it the new green revolution. Trump calls it taking back control. But peel back the patriotic branding, and it's less a revival than a rerun of old political theater. Biden's camp poured billions into clean energy and electric vehicle subsidies under the Inflation Reduction Act, promising a wave of new factories and jobs. Trump, on the other hand, took a sledgehammer approach: tariffs, trade wars, and America First rhetoric meant to shock the system into producing again. The problem? They're fighting the same battle with different slogans. Both parties are selling nostalgia, the dream of the 1960s assembly line economy that doesn't exist anymore. Modern manufacturing is global, automated, and deeply dependent on supply chains stretching across Asia. Every policy photo op touting "Made in America" ignores the reality. Most of those factories rely on imported materials, robots, and foreign capital. So yes, it looks like unity, but in truth, it's just bipartisan illusion. A rare handshake across the aisle built on wishful economics and political storytelling, not actual steel and sweat. For all the talk about bringing back American manufacturing, the math tells a very different story. In the 1960s, manufacturing made up about a quarter of the US economy. By the 1990s, that fell to 15%. Today, barely 10% of GDP, and shrinking. Jobs followed the same path. In the 60s, 1 in 4 Americans worked in manufacturing. Now, it's barely 1 in 12. The latest data is even uglier. The Purchasing Managers Index, a key measure of factory activity, has shown 7 straight months of contraction. Since Liberation Day, around 42,000 manufacturing jobs have vanished, and a quarter of factories reported layoffs this summer, the worst numbers since the pandemic. Sure, you'll hear about a so-called investment boom, but here's the catch: it's almost entirely fueled by AI and data centers, not traditional manufacturing. In fact, many of those AI imports are exempt from tariffs, meaning the reindustrialization money isn't rebuilding Main Street. It's wiring up server farms. Strip away the spin, and the numbers are brutally honest. America isn't reindustrializing, it's digitizing. The new economy doesn't hum with machines and welders, it hums with GPUs and algorithms. The factories politicians promised? Still mostly empty. Politicians love to brag about a new manufacturing boom, but the truth is, most of that money never touched a factory floor. On paper, investment in US industry looks impressive. Billions flowing into construction, equipment, and infrastructure. But peel back the layers, and you'll find the cash isn't going to steel mills, auto plants, or assembly lines. It's going to AI and data centers. These are the gleaming new cathedrals of the digital age. Massive server farms built by tech giants, not toolmakers. The irony? Most of the AI-related hardware and components are imported and conveniently exempt from tariffs, meaning they don't even boost domestic manufacturing. So while the White House touts industrial investment, what we're really seeing is a tech sector land grab, not a return of blue-collar industry. And there's a hidden cost. All that AI spending is sucking up capital, making it harder and more expensive for traditional manufacturers to borrow and expand. Economists call it crowding out, when one booming sector drains oxygen from everything else. In the 1990s, it was telecoms. In 2025, it's AI. The result? America's industrial renaissance is being built, not on steel and sweat, but on silicon and server racks. Here's the part no one in Washington likes to talk about. You can't rebuild an industrial workforce without workers. And America's immigration policy is doing the exact opposite. Both parties chant "Made in America," but at the same time, they're making it harder for the people who actually make things to come here. Modern factories need skilled labor: welders, engineers, machine techs, and those skills don't grow on trees. The fastest way to fill that gap is by bringing in experienced workers from countries where those industries already exist. But a hyper-restrictive immigration policy means fewer visas, slower approvals, and more deportations. The contradiction blew up recently when hundreds of South Korean workers helping to build a new Hyundai plant in Georgia were detained and deported for having the wrong visa. The result? Delays, confusion, and a public embarrassment for the same administration promising a manufacturing boom. Even Trump had to backtrack, softening visa rules for Korean workers after realizing his policies were undercutting his own industrial agenda. Bottom line, you can't reindustrialize a country while closing the gates on the global talent it needs. Without workers, all the subsidies and tariffs in the world won't bring those assembly lines back to life. While America debates whether tariffs or subsidies will bring jobs home, China has already won the industrial war. Today, it controls 35% of global manufacturing output, more than the next 10 countries combined. That's not just dominance, that's monopoly level scale. Every time US politicians promise to revive American manufacturing, Beijing quietly builds another industrial megacity, another factory cluster, another supply chain America can't compete with. And here's the kicker. Despite tariffs, America's trade deficit hasn't really budged. Once you strip out temporary spikes in gold and pharmaceutical imports, the deficit sits right where it's been for years. Even worse, the foreign investments Trump likes to brag about, deals with Japan, the EU, and South Korea, actually increase that deficit. When foreign companies invest billions in the US, they drive up the value of the dollar, making American exports more expensive abroad. So while Washington celebrates a few ribbon cuttings, China is cranking out solar panels, EV batteries, and microchips at record pace. The harsh truth? Reindustrializing the US was always a fantasy, reversing a century-long decline in manufacturing. America's industrial muscle didn't just move overseas, it evolved, and China's the one flexing it now. After all the headlines, tariffs, and trillion-dollar subsidies, America's great industrial comeback still hasn't shown up. The manufacturing share of the economy keeps shrinking, factories keep cutting staff, and the only thing booming is political optimism. The truth is, you can't rebuild what the global economy has already moved past. Reindustrializing a country that spent decades outsourcing, automating, and downsizing isn't just hard. It's almost impossible without rewriting how the economy works. America's manufacturing peak was a century ago. The world has since evolved into one giant interconnected supply chain. No set of tariffs or slogans can roll that back. Yes, a few ribbon cuttings make for good campaign footage, but beneath the photo ops lies the same hollow trend. Fewer workers, more machines, and an industrial base that exists mostly on PowerPoint slides. Meanwhile, China and a few emerging economies are building the factories, supply lines, and labor pools America once had. So when you hear the factories are coming back, remember, that line sells votes, not reality. America's reindustrialization isn't a rebirth. It's a rerun of a dream that no longer fits the modern world. The myth lives on, but the machines are still silent.